guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Heather. I am the owner and author behind townsandhouse.com, where I help you implement systems and strategies in order to overcome the chaos and cultivate simplicity in your home and homeschool. If you are not subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. There's a subscribe button. There's a little green leaf that you could hover over and subscribe. There's the bell icon to notify you of new videos that are going out. Today I am going to be talking to you all about planning from behind, what that is, and how I use it in my homeschool planning. So the first thing that we do have to discuss is what planning from behind is. Now, I did do a video on schooling all year long as a homeschooler. We're year-round homeschoolers, and I did mention planning from behind briefly. I'll leave a link for that video down below. You may find it useful in coordination with this video. So planning from behind is essentially writing out what you have done in a day after you've done it. So you write down all of the things that you and your kids did in a day, and then what you will do is you'll go through that list and you will categorize it based on the subject areas that are most commonly known as school subject areas. For example, if you go on a nature walk and you take a journal with you and you draw something that you found, and then you come home and you write a little bit about it and you research a little bit about it, that covers a lot of different subjects. That's going to cover science, it's going to cover physical education, it's going to cover English and fine arts, depending on what you are drawing and writing, and the research about the certain thing that you have found, whether it's a bird or a type of tree or plant or mushroom or whatever it is. It covers a whole array of subjects. And so that one, hour out in nature has actually been has encompassed such a broad range of subjects for your day. And I think oftentimes as homeschoolers, we forget that learning is more than just sitting down at the table, going through worksheets, and even just reading books. Homeschooling offers us the freedom to really explore many different things, not just a specific curricula that we're going through. Now, I am a planner person. I actually have my Erin Condren teacher lesson planner right here because I'm going to show you how I use this with planning from behind. I do spend an exorbitant amount of time planning out our homeschool year. I want to make sure that I know when our vacations are, what days off are we going to take, how many days of school a month are we going to be doing. I do schedule out a lot of books to read. We're literature-based homeschoolers, so we do a lot of reading. And I have a lot of normal homeschool resources that we use throughout the year. However, because we're year-round homeschoolers and we do take breaks periodically, I do look for other opportunities for learning. Does that mean that I am looking for a learning opportunity every single day? Not necessarily, but I do recognize them, and that's because I have been doing this planning behind thing for about a decade. I didn't know what it was called 10 years ago when I would write down what Emma was doing throughout the day. And back when she was in preschool and kindergarten in the early elementary years, it's a lot easier to plan that way, to write out what you did. What were your kids interested in? Were you playing Play-Doh? Were you playing hide and seek? Did you read a poem together? Were you baking something? Those are the types of things that you would write down for planning from behind. But I didn't know that that was a term until a couple of years ago when I heard Julie Bogart from the Brave Writer program speak about it. And when I heard her talk about it, a light bulb kind of went off for me, and I said, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing. And And it was nice to sort of hear somebody else say that. It's always nice for a homeschooler to hear somebody else is doing something similar to what you're doing or encourages you to do something that you're thinking about doing. And the reason is because homeschooling is so outside what we normally think of as school. I think that I often will try to figure out if I'm doing enough, if I'm doing the right thing, and what ends up happening, you second guess yourself. So planning from behind really helped pull me out of that. Now, I do spend a lot of time planning out our year, like I said, but because we do school year round and we take breaks periodically throughout the year, I do try to have other learning opportunities available to my kids. Now, like I said, it's not an everyday thing, but because I've been doing it for so long, it's easy for me to recognize when my kids are still doing learning activities. And I know I've talked about this several times in several videos and vlogs over the past couple of months that Emma is really interested in axolotls, and so she took it upon herself to research axolotls and put together a presentation because she really wants them to be legalized as pets in Maine. So she spent a good deal of time writing letters to our local representative and state representatives to give her opinion on why axolotls ought to be allowed as pets in Maine. Now, that was something that she did completely on her own, without my input, without my help really at all. She took the initiative on herself, and she researched everything and put everything together, and the only thing I really helped her with was, some spelling and grammar at the end for her Google Slides presentation, and to go through, final drafts for letters that she had created. Now, that is a lot of work that my 11-year-old went through, and I don't want to say, oh, well, that wasn't what I had planned for school, so we're just gonna, that was just something you did on your own. No, what I do is I write down all of those things. So every day that she spends time researching or writing or creating something with regards to this particular presentation, I will write it down and keep track of that. Because even when we are not doing school, when we're on breaks or whatnot, if she's doing that for a significant portion of the day, that is still learning, and I want that to be included in her homeschool portfolio for the year, in her learning portfolio for the year. Now, I know that not every state requires that kind of record keeping, but I think that it's a good practice to get into, especially as you move into the upper grades, so that you need, when your kid gets into high school, you need to keep track of all of that information. And so if you start early and just have a record keeping system from the early grades, it becomes normal, and you won't be rushing when they're a junior in high school to try and figure out, well, what is a transcript and how do I put that together? Because you will have been keeping these learning portfolios right through all of your years. It's not necessary unless it's a requirement in your state. So, it's up to you on how you want to do that. Planning from behind really is just looking at what your kids do in a specific day and recording that, and then categorizing all of those things that you have done with your kids into the different subject areas. Now, I am a planner, like I said, and I do plan out our homeschool year. But when we have breaks and vacations, specifically I'm thinking about our big winter break, which we take from Thanksgiving through the first week in January. That's our really big chunk of time off. Even though we take that time off, we're still doing school. It's just adjusted from our normal curriculum that we do during the other months of the year. So I plan seasonally. So we are entering into our summer season now. And like I said, we do school from July through June. That's kind of how I set up our homeschool year. So in July, we are doing school, but it is not sitting down and doing a math lesson every day, doing a reading lesson, doing a writing lesson, history, science. It's different in that I let my kids have a lot more control over what they are doing during those times, and then I do a lot of planning from behind. I wanted to show you how I use my Erin Condren Teacher Lesson Planner to do some of that planning from behind. So the Erin Condren Teacher Lesson Planner does have 6 columns up at the top, and what I usually do is write one child's name in each of these first 3 columns. And so for planning from behind, what you will do is you will just come in and make a couple of notes right on this specific day under whichever child you are recording information for. And it doesn't have to be long and detailed, although it certainly can. And if it is long and detailed, obviously you would not necessarily put it directly in the planner. You might need to write it out first and then have like an addendum to the planner for your record keeping purposes. But what I do is I will just write out a quick little note, and then I will write either a symbol or a letter signifying which subject area it covers and about how long that they do that thing. Now, you don't need to keep track of how long they do a specific thing unless you're required to count hours. We are not required to count hours, but I do, I don't want to count something that they do for 5 minutes as a learning exercise. You certainly can. And in the broad span of a day, a lot of that may end up being a significant portion of time. But if they are research something, if they look something up on Wikipedia and it takes them 5 minutes, I don't necessarily count that as a learning activity. So the way that it works for me is that I plan our homeschool year in seasons, and we have built in large chunks of time off. One of those is usually July. I'm not doing a lot of formal learning, and then we start our new curriculum usually the first week in August, and we do a slow rolling start, which I can talk about in another time, how we start our homeschool year. But so for July, I want to take July and make sure that I'm writing down the things that we do. We do a lot of gardening in our family, so that is learning and science. Planning out where to plant things, how things can grow together or not grow together, how much to plant for our family's needs. And so that's a lot of science and health and nutrition, gardening specifically. But there are also other things that you can do. Really anything that your child is interested in doing. Take a step back and look at what they're doing and see, is this something that is educational? I know a lot of people will get very concerned about the amount of time their kids spend on video games. And I am one of those people. Specifically, Jack, he would probably play video games all day long if I allowed him. However, what I have noticed is that when he is not playing video games, he is trying to create video games using Scratch, which is a free online coding program. He is trying to learn different computer languages to create his own video games. He is writing scripts based on his video game playing and trying to create a movie script so that he can create this movie about the video game. The same thing with Minecraft. He will do, I've mentioned this before, he does Let's Play videos and really enjoys filming and explaining, and all of that is a great learning opportunity and not something that he would necessarily get sitting down at a desk going through worksheets. Descriptions of things when he's going through what he's doing in Minecraft, all of the writing that he's done for his Super Mario Brothers movie script. It's I think that he's typed over like 80 pages of text for that. I have not actually read it, but the fact that he's put in that amount of effort to make this movie script, I think is an incredible thing for a 9-year-old. I mean, he did a lot of the movie script when he was 8. So you really have to look at your kids, look at what they're doing, and get out of that public school mindset and try and see what they're learning for what they are learning. Like I said, it doesn't have, English is not just grammar. It's not just spelling, and it's not just a research paper. That is all part of English, but it's not the only part of English. Science is not only memorizing the periodic table. There's a lot more to science than just that. And the same with history. I mean, there's so many different projects that your kids could explore on their own. And honestly, when they take that initiative, when your kids take that initiative to learn something, to seek out information on their own, you want to foster that. And this planning from behind allows you as a parent to still know that they are accomplishing school, but it also allows your child to follow their interests and know that they are capable of learning something on their own. I've said a lot that my purpose as a homeschool parent, my biggest goal for my kids, is to create lifelong learners. And I want them, when they need to learn something, to know how to seek out the information. That's what we do as parents, right? When we need to learn something, we go to YouTube, we Google it, we search for books to figure it out on our own. We don't, sometimes, yes, we may take a class, but if you've clogged up the toilet and you don't know, and you don't have the plunger isn't working and you need to figure out how to use a snake for your pipes or whatever, you're going to figure that out. Sometimes you will call a plumber if it's really bad, but oftentimes you try to do it for yourself first, and that's learning, and you want your kids to also seek out the information. You don't want them to go to the end thing first. You don't want them to take like the super easy way, because that might not always be an option in the future. You want them to be self-sufficient and productive, and you want them to seek out those learning opportunities, and allowing them a little bit of freedom when you are in breaks allows that to happen. Now, planning from behind can also be done as a year-round homeschool planning strategy. I am pretty particular when it comes to planning, and I like to make sure that I have certain benchmarks for our year. I do not plan our entire year all at once. I know that there are some people that are able to do that and to keep on track, but I like to follow my kids' interests a little bit more, and I like to switch things up. I am one of those very few people that likes change. So monthly, I will look at our homeschool schedule and I make adjustments. And I do this because I have been homeschooling for a decade, so I know where I can easily make adjustments when we're going throughout our weeks and days when I need to make adjustments. But planning from behind can be a strategy to use during an entire homeschool year. And the way that you would do that is you would bring the resources into your home and you would let your kids have a little bit more control. You wouldn't sit down and plan out every single lesson that they're going to do. Or perhaps you plan out lessons for a few specific subjects, but then let things flow in other subjects. Things like history and science, especially in the earlier grades, it's easy to do a unit study instead of a year-long program. You don't have to commit to 180 days of a specific curriculum. And that's okay. I know that it can be a little scary to think about that you need somebody to tell you what you're supposed to be doing, right? You can't just do it without somebody else telling you. But with the freedom of homeschooling, you can do that. You can create your own curriculum. You can create your own units. You can let your kids lead a little bit more. So that is what I do for planning from behind. I use that mainly on our big chunks of time off, but I also do use it throughout our regular school year. There are some certain things that we do every day during a regular school year, which for us is about August to April. We have specific things that I expect them to do each day. But those things do not take up the entire day. They can. Some days math takes 6 hours, and that's just how the day is. But it's not like that every day, you know. So my kids have a particular set of tasks that they need to complete each day for school, and then they have a lot of free time in order to explore their interests. And like I said before, I want my kids to explore their interests, but I also want to recognize that they are still learning, and I want to keep track of that in my Erin Condren Teacher Lesson Planner, because this becomes a great record of our entire homeschool year. Now, I also do portfolios for my kids. I have special binders and boxes of stuff that they have done through the years, but to have everything sort of in one place, all of the books that we've read, all of the lessons that we've done, all of that stuff available in this planner. It helps me for record keeping, like I said, for our end of the year portfolio. It just keeps me on task and to make sure that we are continuously moving forward. Now, like I said earlier in the video, you do not have to look for a learning opportunity in every single day. I mean, sometimes you just want to go on vacation and not think about education, and that is totally fine. I have definitely been there. There are a lot of times when I just say, okay, we're just done. We're done. We're taking a week off, and that's it. And that is totally fine. As long as you're meeting your requirements for your state, you don't need to feel like you have to record every single detail of your kids' lives. I do record a lot of them, partly because I like to have it for memory keeping and also for record keeping, and I just like a good big picture idea of what we have done. But that does not mean that I spend every day doing that. Now, some other options, if you don't have an Erin Condren Teacher Lesson Planner or you don't want to use one, that's fine. You could certainly use any sort of spiral notebook. Just write the date, write your kid's name, write out what they did, and just make it a practice. You know, at the end of the day, take 15 minutes to sit down and write out what your kids did for the day. Even if you're following a specific curriculum, you know, write down anything else and then recognize what your kids have been doing. It also helps to sort of give you something to talk about at dinner. You know, oh, so-and-so found this new bird in our backyard and we'd never seen it before, and this is what they found out about it. And it helps you to sort of build relationships and understand what your kids are doing and to give them the accolades to know that learning is a great freedom that we have and something that should be celebrated regularly, you know, and it helps to bring the enchantment back in your homeschool. That's something that Julie Bogart talks a lot about, enchantment, in her book, The Brave Learner. One of the things she talks about is just trying to follow your kids' interests and let them love school. You know, you don't want to bring your kids home and do homeschool and then have everybody be miserable. That's not the purpose of homeschooling. You want the freedom and you want the excitement and the enchantment of learning. You want that for your kids, probably because you didn't necessarily have that growing up, or you may have had some really great teachers and some really crappy teachers. So I hope that this video helped you, and if you have more questions about planning from behind, I do have an entire blog post that I've written about this as well, and you can leave me a comment if you have a question. I would love to know if you have done anything like this, or if you've heard about planning from behind, or you do something similar but you didn't know that it had a name. Please leave a comment below and let me know about how you plan out your homeschool year. And I just want you to be encouraged. You know, homeschooling is such an off the beaten path type of way to live. You know, homeschooling is really a way of life, and it can be challenging. It can be challenging because you may not know a lot of homeschoolers in your area, or all of the homeschoolers that you know teach things differently than you do. And so there aren't a set of standards for homeschooling. You know, everybody gets to do what they want to do, within the context of what their state requires for homeschooling laws. So it's nice to be able to see some common ground with other homeschoolers, and I hope that I am giving that to you a little bit. Again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.